Audio.
Benefits of this country. So, well, you know what? If you don't like the culture, you don't like the custom of this country, then maybe you should go.
For
back
what
to
is
the
more
country you're
important than
trying
the
to
permanence
escape.
of the
In this
American
case,
nation and people?
He's saying this guy
Buchanan?
should go. He has the support. He has the mandate of the masses, of the fans. It is being thrust upon him by elitists at the top of the league. And by the way, if you think that the NHL, if you think that hockey, if you're running this, right, if you're a commissioner and you think that the LGBTQAAIP jerseys are going to be an easy sell to a bunch of Eastern Europeans, many of whom still think wearing helmets are gay, you're out of touch.
Yeah, you're out of touch and it's unnecessary. Why do you need to have rainbow-colored numbers and like, are gays not visible right now? Do we really need to highlight homosexuality right now to make sure that there's visibility, that they feel seen and that there's inclusion? Are you kidding me?
Well, what do you think, wearing the cloak from Harry Potter? We can all tell.
Yeah. Exactly. Well, look, make sure you download the Rumble app. That's the only way to make sure that we absolutely 100%. The actually notifications.
Yeah, notifications work on the Rumble app.
That's a great way to do it. So make sure you go to the App Store right now.
I'd be very surprised if this show stays on YouTube.
I doubt it will. But look, the NHL commissioner, kind of in response to this, Gary Bettman, he spoke about potentially ending pregnant. So this is the silver lining. He gets pushed back a little bit, make a little bit of noise in a nice, winsome, fun way, and all of a sudden, here's his quote. This is one issue where players, for a variety of reasons, may not feel comfortable wearing the uniform as a form of endorsement. Well, of course they don't.
Right.
You're forcing something on them. Right now, how about this? I got an idea for you. If you want to see what people think of
Welcome.
this, why don't we come up with a Christian theme?
Hey, Anna.
All the uniforms have crosses.
White pill
on them.
time?
And then if somebody is Muslim and they say, hey, I don't want to wear this.
Actually,
tell them
the
to
new
go back
right
to
is
where
what
they
I'm
came
listening
from
to.
So that they can play hockey. They don't play hockey in Saudi Arabia.
Maybe somewhere in like
I'll listen to Crowder at work. I got what chapter am I on? On chapter 9, Get in the Chop. It's the very end of it, so we're almost to chapter 10.
Asks a great deal. The founding fathers took the idea of dissolving outdated governments for granted. They had also done it twice, emancipating themselves from Great Britain, and then later, in secret, overturning the Articles of Confederation, something they were explicitly forbidden from doing. While many in the new right insist that a white nation will be inherently cohesive, the war between the states, the bloodiest conflict in American history by far, was fought by white people against other white people. Buchanan knows this quite well. For our divisions are rooted in our deepest beliefs, and upon those beliefs, Americans are almost as divided as we were when General Beauregard gave the order to fire in Fort Sumter. Once again, we are seceding from one another, only this time it is a secession of the heart. So we have been through this before, and it was worse then, even though we were demographically far more united.
I know him, man.
Buchanan quotes the Dallas Morning News as projecting that fewer than half of Texans will be white by 2005.
I could take him in light
And the
doses.
implication is obvious.
He's pretty hypocritical.
In fact, Texas is over 70% white according to the 2010 census. That number is misleading since it combines Hispanic whites and non-Hispanic whites, the latter of which are just over 45% of the population. Yet Donald Trump still defeated Hillary Clinton there by 9%, a sizable margin, but far lower than the hapless Romney's 16% margin over incumbent President Barack Obama in 2012, which was itself higher than John McCain's 12% victory. It's hard to make comparisons to earlier years, since Texans ran as presidential candidates in all elections from 1988 to 2004. On the other hand, the 2014 Republican House majority of 247 was their greatest number since 1927, and 2014's Republican Party was far more ideologically right-wing than at any point in those intervening years. A proportion of this was due to the creation of majority-minority districts, artificially engineered congressional districts designed to guarantee stronger minority representation. Yet this again is an argument against the idea that demographics is destiny. One of the issues, that immigrants will simply vote themselves welfare benefits or even vote to turn America into the countries that they escaped from, can be addressed by limiting voting rights. Many countries have severe restrictions on citizenship and thereby the right to vote, and these are not authoritarian nations either. One of the biggest, if not the biggest obstacles to restricting suffrage is that the evangelical left views extending voting rights as their greatest moral victory and the basis of their identity as a movement. There is literally nothing else that matters as much to them or that they would be as willing to fight over. They, understandably, view any talk of restricting the vote as a code word for Jim Crow. Voting in America has not always been one man, one vote, or even one person, one vote. Not only have there been many restrictions on suffrage, but there have been many restrictions on representation as well, most famously with the Constitution counting slaves as 3/5 of a person. What some forget or choose to ignore is that those slaves were all represented by their owners. The higher the number of slaves in aggregate, the more powerful the slave owners would be in Congress. I'm not 3/5 of a person makes for a nice chant, and a good lyric is more important than a mere fact. The West has come under existential threat before many times. The question on the table is whether it is dying now and whether that death is inevitable. For many on the new right, that answer is a very firm yes. Chapter 10. Secondhand Lives. Of all tyrannies, a tyranny sincerely exercised for the good of its victims may be the most oppressive. It would be better to live under robber barons than under omnipotent moral busybodies. The robber baron's cruelty may sometimes sleep, his cupidity may at times be satiated, but those who torment us for our own good will torment us without end, for they do so with the approval of their own conscience. C.S. Lewis. If conservatives operate politically, the new right operates sociologically. One of their mechanisms for destroying the corporate press is to focus on how they function and on their techniques, as opposed to any one individual story. A key leader in this aspect of new right activism is Mike Cernovich.
Let me get the car wash first
Writing about men's
before we
issues,
grab our
a huge
morning
breeding ground for
beverage.
new right recruitment in a post-feminist America.
We have a few days of no rain, so and my car is covered in mud from the
Joe
weekend.
Rogan occupies similar niches, encouraging skepticism toward the cathedral and self-development. In 2015, Cernovich self-published Guerrilla Mindset, a book that explains how to control your thoughts and emotions and live life on your terms. Yet despite his swagger and the book's title, his writing is far more new age than neo-reactionary. Many of the ideas have been staples of women's magazines for years, including the benefits of meditation and being present. Cernovich has cleverly repackaged such concepts in a manner friendly for guys, and in the process, he has given men permission to engage in these activities without feeling stigmatized. It's akin to when Coca-Cola invented Coke Zero, which was conceived as a male alternative for those who were too embarrassed by the perceived effeminacy of ordering a Diet Coke. Yet Cernovich doesn't pull punches online, frequently calling out reporters that he regards as dishonest, as opposed to those with whom he merely disagrees. Despite his love of aggression, he isn't some meathead thug in person. He speaks with a lisp, which leads his foes to mock him as the author of Guerrilla Mindset. He's also quite even-tempered and laid back. What I go for is self-possession, he explains.
Yeah, I get to the office. We can play some poker. I want to force you guys. Want to ahead of time, that's fine too.
If I'm on someone else's show and he wants to be the boss, I don't care. If he talks over me, I don't feel diminished. I'm having fun. The transition from men's writer to new right figurehead was an organic one. We live in a woman's world, he explained. Men are told they're living in a man's world and they're looking around thinking, well, not for me.
Sorry, there are no
With
awards
men, there
available.
isn't any real
Issues
help with
alternate
alienation.
payment.
Much of contemporary feminism is based on things like the relative number of male CEOs. It's called the apex fallacy, he said. Too many men at the top. Okay, what about the men at the bottom? Male suicide is 4 times women's suicide. Look at homelessness, drug addiction, and suicide rates. Men are often the biggest winners and the biggest losers.
Review your selections and
Late
press pay
1960s
now.
hippie culture, though strongly anti-war and pro-civil rights, was still largely a way for young people to bond over shared interests
Insert
and
or
values.
swipe card now.
A great deal
Follow
of
the
new right
instructions
activity
on
involves
the reader
self-improvement
display
and
or
teaches
press
young
the
people,
red stop
especially
button
men,
on the reader
to be the
go back.
highest version of themselves they possibly can be. It's a natural reaction to the idea that white men are privileged and
Or
have it
pull
easy
into the wash
when
bay.
so many young people of all ethnicities are struggling. Struggling comparatively less because of one's white ancestry is hardly a way to mollify depression, anxiety.
Morning D News, morning Boss the Hug.
No one doubts that wealthy and
Gotta
powerful people, the most
wash the
privileged
mud
of
off the
all,
car.
suffer from these maladies in enormous proportions as well. In 2008, there was no shortage of attacks on the rule of old white men.
Please.
By
Thank
many
you.
of the same people who came around to Bernie Sanders in 2016. The new right, with its veneration of strength and power, naturally views attacks on masculinity, which is not the exclusive province of men, as evil and dangerous. The only time you're allowed to talk about masculinity, Cernovich quipped, is bacon, boobs, beer, and CrossFit. But that doesn't threaten the structure. Men and women mature at different rates. Men shouldn't
Not even spraying it, huh?
because we people are women.
Motherfuckers. This will be the last time I come here.
Some men have a uterus repeated 11 times. Something apparently becomes true when you say it 10 times or more. There's also been legal movements, subtle but successful, to change birth certificates from father and mother, parent one and parent two.
Yeah, it takes quarters. I doubt you could get a whole wash for 25 cents.
Going after life, going hard, and not conforming.
Yeah, I think
These are all things that are taught to women shamelessly and constantly. Girl power. There's a program for what you're supposed to do as a man, he concluded, but it's all due to It's women's turn. Men should do as they're told and sit by and be remorseful for their past transgressions. In August 2016, Cernovich was invited to be a panelist on Fox News' Red Eye. 1 week later, the Daily Beast employed Grove for a piece asking the rhetorical question, why did Fox News welcome date rape apologist Mike Cernovich? The sidebar link to the article had the alternative title of Date Rape Apologist Welcomed on Fox News. Grove's source for this classification was Cernovich's past tweet that said, have you guys ever tried raping a girl without using force? Try it. It's basically impossible. Date rape does not exist. The article led off with quotes from two of Cernovich's conservative enemies, Ben Shapiro and Ben Howe. Within the piece, a spokesperson for Fox News was quick to point out that he would not be invited back. At the time, Cernovich had 78,000 Twitter followers. After they did a hit job and banned me from Fox News, I realized that I was never going to be legitimate, he told me. That gave me a sense of freedom. I can go after anyone I want. I realized the only way to be legitimate is to redefine what legitimate means, and I redefine by sheer numbers.
a quick
Less than a
vacuum in
year
the
after
front floor
Daily
here
Beast
too.
article, Cernovich's Twitter followers had tripled. We've seen this before. The path was set by Matt Drudge, who broke the Monica Lewinsky story and in the process broke the old media model and almost took down the company. At the time, the corporate press was meeting with collective minds, wondering how to report the scandalous story, or if they should respond to it at all. Instead, Drudge blew it wide open. The press retaliated by trying to decree him as illegitimate. In a sense, they were right. He did not have the imprimatur of a brand like the New York Times. In another sense, that didn't matter. He was breaking news that contained real, truthful information. What we are told is journalism at its most basic. Things have not changed since the mid-1990s. When the corporate press engages in idle speculation, it's having a discussion. When someone with a large following on social media engages in brainstorming, it's dangerous and irresponsible. When Omar Mateen killed dozens of people in Orlando's Pulse nightclub in June 2016, Cernovich took to Twitter to argue that there must have been a second gunman. He gave very clear, cogent reasons for his thinking, as well as a perfectly logical reason why the police did not confess to sex, namely, that the second shooter had yet to be apprehended. For this, he was widely attacked. On the other hand, when Malaysia Airlines Flight 370 went missing in March 2014, the media's thinking was somewhat less grounded in plausibility. CNN's Don Lemon asked whether a black hole could have been responsible. As everyone who takes high-school physics knows, a black hole isn't an actual hole at all, but a collapsed star several orders of magnitude heavier than our sun. Its gravitational field is so strong that it literally bends space and time and would destroy the entire Earth. Like Drudge did in creating an alternative, curated version of a newspaper with his site, the New Right often provides alternative versions of stories themselves. Before social media, Cernovich pointed out, you could read about yourself in the New York Times, they would do a hit job on you, and what can you do? Write a letter to the editor? You're fucked. Now, technology offers resources to make that no longer the case. A small, focused army is going to be far quicker and better at reacting than a large, powerful force. It's how a pack of wolves can take down a moose, especially if that moose is past its prime and has lost touch with reality. In March 2017, 60 Minutes did an interview with Cernovich. I knew what they were going to try and what they were going to try and hit me with, he told me. What they wanted to do was hit me with Pizzagate. One of the problems with being red-pilled is that once one believes everything one sees as a lie, it's often hard to navigate to truth. And in fact, the more intricate and bizarre something sounds, the more intriguing its veracity becomes. Pizzagate was a Byzantine conspiracy theory that emerged in social media in late 2016. Briefly, and there are hours of mind-numbing video and hundreds of posts explaining it as well, it consists of the claim that Clinton tax dollar John Podesta was involved in a pedophile sex trafficking ring operating out of Washington, D.C.'s Comet Pizzeria. First fodder for the theory was found in a 2011 tweet by Andrew Breitbart. How Prague guru John Podesta isn't household name as world-class underage sex slave ops cover-upper descending unspeakable dregs escapes me. What Andrew was referring to at the time is anybody's guess, and many have tried. Self-styled internet sleuths went through the social media accounts of James Elefantis, the pizzeria's owner, and found all sorts of supposed boy love symbols in his household art, and inferred various references in photographs he had of, clothed, children, including one of a young girl taped down to a desk by her wrists. Things finally reached a head in December of 2016, when a gunman went to the pizzeria and fired several rounds. As a demonstration of how great the disparity is between things that matter to the new right and those that concern mainstream conservatism, I was on a panel with National Review editor Rich Lowry 3 days later, and he was completely unaware of Pizzagate at all. Frankly, this is to his credit. And please, dear reader, don't look up Elsagate either. I never mentioned Comet Pizza or James Elefantis, Cernovich said. They wanted to say that I propagated Pizzagate. Fake news is dangerous on the medicine society. That way, they could call and banning me from social media. They want us all off social media so they can control the narrative.
All right.
Cernovich knew 60 Minutes would not be a friendly interview, and he took action accordingly. There's an app on my iPhone, he explained. They didn't know I was recording. It's legal to record even in a two-party consent state if there's no reasonable expectation of privacy.
Yeah, it's $50 a month here if you want to do the monthly.
He had the
I don't do it enough. I don't watch it enough.
If anything was taken out of context, he would be able to set the record straight. Before the segment,
I've done a couple months in the summertime, but
which created hype,
they put you on auto pay and all that crap. Fuck that.
anticipated. Once
If I want to buy a month, I'll buy a month. Don't
conference addressing it,
autofill it on me.
guaranteeing himself the last word.
If they did that, I told them I wouldn't do it no more.
I realize that if there's a big hit job on us, we need to counter-program it and get people to watch us instead. On June 19th, 2017, Megyn Kelly was all set to reveal her interview with Alex Jones on her new show. I was first introduced to Alex Jones by one of my fellow trolls who posted a YouTube clip titled, Alex Jones, Juice Boxes Making Kids Gay. The reason there's so many gay people now, Jones claimed in the video, is because it's a chemical warfare operation. I have the government documents where they said they were going to encourage homosexuality with chemicals so that people don't have children. He then cut open a juice box and revealed the smoking gun, the thin plastic lining on the inside. Jones went on to conflate same-sex attraction with transgenderism. After you're done drinking your little juices, you're ready to go out and have a baby. You're ready to put makeup on. You're ready to wear a short skirt. You're ready to put together a garden of roses or something. Whatever the supposed government conspiracy, Jones has discussed it and probably broke the story on his InfoWars show. One of his first big breaks was sneaking into the Bohemian Grove ceremony in 2000. Bohemian Grove is a secret meeting of high-powered men where supposedly all sorts of plots are hatched. When Jones confronted David Gergen about the gathering and its cremation of care ritual, the unflappable advisor to 4 presidents did his version of turning apoplectic. Obviously, something secretive was going on, but that something needn't be nefarious. Richard Nixon described the gathering as merely the most faggy goddamn thing you could ever imagine. There was great backlash against Kelly's piece before it debuted, with a few stations refusing to even air the episode. If Jones had merely been a con man or a lunatic, no one would have 1993 interview with cult leader Charles Manson, whose underlings were responsible for several grisly murders. Disgraced televangelist Jim Bakker said his piece, America, perhaps the most benign venue possible. Barbara Walters sat down with both Fidel Castro and Muammar Gaddafi, terrorist dictators with many, many bodies to their name. The problem with Jones, then, isn't that he was simply perceived as a conman or a lunatic. The problem was that he does a phenomenal job discrediting the evangelical left as legitimate and moral, and this is something that the cathedral cannot bear. I recall a friend of mine being described as a 9/11 truther. Baffled,
Ooh, dusty
I
as
asked him
hell.
whether this was true.
All right, guys, I'll be right back. I'll grab something to
Is that
drink.
there's more to the story than we are being told. There is always more. Given that several pages of the 9/11 report have been redacted, his statement is not only true, but undeniably true. Yet the term 9/11 truther conflates that perspective with those who claim that the towers were hit not by planes, but by missiles cloaked in holograms. It's easy to caricature Jones as a lunatic or a clown, but Jones subtly and consistently preaches several essential new right ideas. The first is that politics is often a public sideshow, a distraction that grants the illusion of choice when actual decisions are made covertly and secretly without even the pretense of public input. The second is that progressives aren't simply well-meaning people with a difference of opinion who want a safety net and fairness. Rather, they are undiluted, though sometimes deluded, totalitarians at heart who would gladly round up their enemies, i.e. racists, and send them to prison camps if they have the opportunity. Finally, there is the essential perspective that elites hold loyalty to their international community over their given country of origin and/or residence. Much of the new right is about positioning. By having Bernie Sanders to her left, Hillary Clinton could tout herself as a centrist, but this is a relational position, not an absolute one. The letter B is to the right of A, but it's nowhere near the center of the alphabet. Similarly, Alex Jones works as a foil for the new right by making people more reasonable than him come off as palatable. He's also often hilarious. A video of him dorking out with a fidget spinner went viral, and his trolling of the Young Turks at the 2016 Republican convention can safely be described by the overused term of epic. Even his attorney insisted that he was actually a performance artist in Jones's divorce proceedings. When I appeared on Jones's show, Every Troll's Wet Dream, the segment immediately prior was about a subject I knew very little about. I have nothing to say about lizard penis, I told him right away. I can't speak on that. For a pair of supposed lunatics, Cernovich and Jones did a great job with preemptive strikes against Megan, blood coming out of her whatever, Kelly. The whole week we fucked it with her, Cernovich chuckled. He basically gave Jones the same playbook that he used for 60 Minutes, but amplified it. Jones released audio of Kelly and himself speaking on the phone, including her explicitly promising that the interview wasn't going to be a hit piece. So now they're fucked up, Cernovich explained. They know he's got the audio. How bad is Alex gonna fuck with them? What's he gonna do? What's he gonna release? He kept putting out video after video after video. Cernovich then flew out to Jones's hometown of Austin and sat there doing Periscope videos. What we were doing is sucking the oxygen away from the actual hit piece. Jones and Cernovich weaponized the internet's short attention span and used it against Kelly. Most such oddball stories, remember Kafife, last a day or two in the popular consciousness. Even the United States' withdrawal from the Paris Climate Agreement, a major multinational accord that will supposedly prevent catastrophic planetary outcomes, only received 2 days of coverage on CNN. The attention span on Twitter is far shorter. After all, it's a social media site that regards a paragraph's worth of text as too long. Unconsciously, Cernovich pointed out, people felt like they'd already watched it. That's why the episode did fewer viewers than an America's Funniest Home Videos rerun. By the time it aired, Megyn Kelly and Alex Jones was kind of played out, almost literally yesterday's news. To make matters worse for her, Jones streamed it live and provided live critical commentary on his show, denying viewers. Despite Kelly's assurances to the contrary, the interview had the exact same tone of fraudulent disbelief and inherent dishonesty as a 1980s Dungeons & Dragons scare piece. They're learning Satanism. The fact that Donald Trump had once called into Jones's show as a candidate was regarded as so shocking that any actual conclusion didn't even need to be said. But a moment's reflection shows that the sense of terror is absurd. What happened was that a bizarre candidate called into a bizarre show, one with a large audience that he thought would be partial to supporting him. Here, Kelly was borrowing a classic leftist technique, the demand for disavowal. If a given politician or a given political stance attracts the wrong type of audience, it's presented as problematic on its face. This is the sophisticated version of saying the utterly unsophisticated, if he's for it, I'm agin it. In a democracy, every person's vote counts, quite literally. Disavowing followers isn't really about denouncing people. They probably still maintain their support, so much as it is about genuflecting before the demands of progressivism. At its root, the same tactic is similar to the insistence that an accused party must somehow prove that they're not a racist, i.e., someone who doesn't care about racism as much as the evangelical left does. Given that the accuser is also the judge and jury, the accused would find themselves doubly submissive if they took the bait. No matter how much mainstream Republicans tried to demonstrate that they weren't racist, the accusations grew shriller. They went from being called racist in the sense of prejudiced to blithe accusations of literal white supremacy. There is also a major difference between the new right and conservatives, refusing to allow the evangelical left to set the terms of debate. Much of Kelly's piece focused on statements that Jones made about the 2012 Sandy Hook elementary school shooting. In 2018, he would be sued by parents livid at his claims that parts of the Sandy Hook massacre were somehow fake. For Kelly, the key term was Sandy Hook, but for the internet, the key term was 2012. By going back as far as 2012 to find dirt, the implication was that everything Jones had said since is calm, measured, and reasonable. Meanwhile, arguing over comments that Jones made in 2012 has the relevance in contemporary culture of relitigating the Mitt Romney campaign. Jones says far more bizarre and incendiary things on a weekly basis. When I was on his show in 2017, for example,
E-News, everybody. Thanks for hanging out.
North Korean dictator Kim
This is The New Right by Michael Malice.
I tactfully disagree.
Pretty deep into it. This is like chapter 10.
Obnoxious when Trump is referred to as Hitler, or literally Hitler. Kim Jong-un is responsible for the deaths of many people, including his uncle-in-law and his older half-brother. The only person Hillary Clinton is responsible for killing is Vince Foster. That's a joke. We also know she killed Seth Rich. Okay, that's also a joke. It's not like there's a Clinton death list anywhere online for people to Google. Cernovich is perhaps the best member of the new right when it comes to understanding how the cathedral works and exploiting its own rules. In November 2017, Cernovich uncovered proof that John Conyers, who had served 50 years in Congress, was a serial sexual predator. Worse, he had used taxpayer money to settle with his victims, with said settlements being kept secret. Nor was Conyers alone. Rather than run the piece himself, Cernovich gave it to BuzzFeed. I could have taken the glory, gaining tremendous fame for myself while humiliating my enemies in the fake news media, he explained. But if I took this path, the story would have been about me, rather than these secret settlements totaling tens of millions of dollars. His view was absolutely correct. Dozens of articles showed their authors desperately trying to somehow get in an attack on Cernovich, even though he had nothing to do with the story itself, other than acting as a conduit.
Hey, Galos, welcome.
I tipped BuzzFeed off and they did the rest, he wrote. What they did is none of my business and I take zero credit for their work. But in the process, Cernovich's credibility was necessarily strengthened. He broke the story, and there was much wringing of hands about why sources were speaking to a rape apologist, conspiracy theorist, etc., instead of the real reporters. The new right seeks to discredit and obliterate the power of the corporate press. My goal is to destroy the New York Times and CNN, and not just them, Andrew Breitbart once explicitly said. In the 1950s, cigarette companies could blithely go on the air and decree that theirs was the healthiest brand to smoke. In this instance, one tobacco company was in fact telling the truth, because by definition there must be a least harmful brand. Cigarette companies still exist, yet no one would even imagine suggesting that they are healthy in any way, or are organizations concerned with one's family or the nation as a whole. They are what they are. The new right goal is for the public to view the corporate press in the exact same way as they view Chesterfields, as self-serving merchants of death who have their own agenda that is often malignant but never healthy. Given how often the press loves to beat the drums of war, this is not hyperbole. The destruction of the press means unmasking their claim to be objective agents of truth. It is to
I'm waiting for Matt, see if he still needs help. I'll help him out when I get into work.
The process is working and frankly is almost a fait accompli. A 2017 Gallup poll found that 36% of Americans had very little or no faith in newspapers, an all-time high, and 20% had a great deal or quite a lot of faith, an all-time low. By means of comparison, Congress's approval ratings haven't hit 30 in any single poll since 2010. This means the process is working. Once trust is lost, it is very difficult to regain. It is far easier to lose trust than to gain trust, because one lie discredits a speaker far more than one truthful statement gives them credibility. In 2012, presidential debate moderator Candy Crowley declared that she would interject herself into the debate should she see fit. And she did, in fact, forcing the hapless Mitt Romney to fend off both President Obama and the woman who had been selected for a role meant to be impartial. By the 2016 Republican primary debate, the audience was cheering when Ted Cruz berated the moderators over their questions, something which would have seemed insane not too many years prior. Not long after that, nominee Trump pointed directly to the press pool and openly mused about killing them, to the crowd's great applause. In May 2017, Guardian reporter Ben Jacobs tweeted that Montana congressional candidate Greg Gianforte just body slammed me and broke my glasses. Not only did Gianforte go on to win, reporters couldn't even manage to find one voter who dropped their support for him due to the assault. Destruction means not playing fair and taking whatever victories are available. In June 2017, Bill Maher interviewed conservative Republican Senator Ben Sasse on his show Real Time. "I gotta get to Nebraska more," Maher opined. "You're welcome," Sasse told him. "We'd love to have you work in the fields with us." "Work in the fields? Senator, I'm a house." Sasse was taken aback, but this was clearly an unprecedented situation for him. On the one hand, Maher was using a slur. On the other hand, the comedian was being facetious and using the term in reference to himself and not to an actual black person. No doubt taking his cue from the laughing audience, Sasse simply chuckled awkwardly. Sasse did nothing wrong. He did nothing at all, in fact. Maher used a forbidden offensive word. Both men apologized for what they did, or didn't do. Yet much of the outrage on Twitter came from the new right, trying to add fuel to the fire against both the conservative and the leftist. Nothing came to pass, but things were not done yet. The Maher incident came a few days after comedian Kathy Griffin posed with the decapitated dummy head of President Trump. The reaction was as swift and violent as an actual beheading. Griffin was summarily dismissed from her annual gig co-hosting CNN's New Year's Eve event. Her partner Anderson Cooper, who she considered a close friend, publicly denounced her. Every single venue from her upcoming comedy tour canceled her appearance. It was very clear that Griffin did not expect this sort of reaction. This is partly due to the circles she runs in. The first rule of improv is yes and, meaning one takes what one is given and escalates it. Clearly, denigrating Trump is simply what one does in Griffin's part of the culture. From there, it just becomes an issue of what one outdoes compared to the others, without any input from external elements of the nation. I suspect if Griffin had clad herself in a hijab, she would have gotten far less of a backlash and would have been able to get away with a simple apology. Instead, in a somewhat rambling press conference, Griffin blamed Trump for the fallout. A sitting president of the United States and his grown children and the First Lady are personally, I feel, personally trying to ruin my life forever. My impression is that they have mobilized their armies or their bots or whatever they do. Like I said, it's quite clear to me that they're trying to use me as a distraction. It's not surprising that inherent in Griffin's thinking was the idea that there had to be some leader calling forth his troops. We all need a boogeyman to point to, a villain who embodies our opponents in one person. This is one of the greatest strengths of the new right. Yes, there are many prominent personalities within the movement, but all of them are, by and large, expendable to varying degrees. Trump is the consequence, not the goal, and most certainly not the head, pun intended, in any sense. None of my contacts in the New Right were genuinely offended.
We're heading to the office.
Most saw it as a stupid stunt.
Last day this week at the Monroe office.
The iconography of decapitation is disturbing, which is understandable. But it was the conservatives who were offended because this wasn't the president she was going after. Those on the New Right simply saw this as an opportunity to get a leftist scalp. A key tactic used
We'll do a
by the New
desktop
Right
stream
is
too when we
forcing
get
the
there.
enemy to make difficult choices. Are they going to be held to the principles they espouse, or are they going to be loyal to their own people?
I like that color
If they are in
Mustang.
complete control, they can get away with doing both. But if there's pressure, then they will have to choose. In such a case, some will choose the former, while others will choose the latter. And both sides will be upset with the other for making the wrong choice. In fact, that's exactly what happened. Some defended Griffin on free speech grounds. Others felt the need to distance themselves and throw her under the bus. But they did have to choose one or the other. They continue on as if nothing had happened. Those days were done, and no one bothered to tell Griffin that. She had said bad things in the past and been forced to apologize for them with no lasting repercussions whatsoever. So what had changed in the meantime? On the surface, in her mind, it was that Trump was now president. It was a logical conclusion to reach, but it was wrong. In fact, it only took one more week for the New Right to claim another scalp. In 2012, Todd Akin was the Republican Senate candidate for Missouri. Akin also happened to be dumb as rocks, and I don't even mean the smart kind of rocks. During his campaign, he was asked a very frequent question that pro-lifers have to address. How do you handle the issue when the body has ways to try to shut that whole thing down? Whether it's rare or not, the question
Figure
remains.
out your uploading
And in
issue?
fact, Akin got it exactly wrong. According to the book Sperm Wars, women are more likely to conceive as a result of rape, not less, and definitely not at all. The idea that this profoundly ignorant man would have political power over women's reproductive lives was regarded as obscene.
Still ain't got it figured out. Okay, we'll work on it when I do on the desktop.
Islamic apologist and later CNN host Reza Aslan tweeted, "Just to be clear, I was indeed wishing someone would rape Congressman Todd Akin. I'd hate to be misunderstood. Funny? Not really. Profane? Certainly. But the context clearly matters here. This wasn't wishing harm on a politician out of nowhere, but in reaction to their comments. At the time, nothing came of it. That's because the time was 2012. By 2017, the rules had changed. After Aslan called President Trump a piece of shit on Twitter, is that really worse than calling him literally Hitler and Antichrist? A campaign was launched and Aslan was fired. His series canceled, and to this day, he probably still thinks it had something to do with Trump. Cernovich has taken it upon himself to be one of the organizers.
He
of the
will.
right,
He who?
and part of what that means is to hold events and bring people literally together. The fact that so many members of the subculture are not only anonymous, but often
What are you talking about?
geographically removed from one another is an issue. There is a social cost for being a member
Lackluster
of the
said you
right
had to?
in, say, New York City, where a MAGA cap is virtually the equivalent of, if not a swastika, then perhaps a Confederate flag. In that vein, Cernovich announced a series of events called A Night for Freedom. The first was held in New York City on January 20th, 2018.
So, question
There aren't enough events happening
before we even get started with it.
Stuff happening in the left,
Hang on,
right,
let
or
me pause
center is
this.
boring. It's
Is it what type of device is the video itself on? Is it on your mobile device, or do you already have it like on a laptop or computer?
bunch of people sitting around at tables of 10 to 12
Okay.
people eating bland food while a speaker drones on in front of a podium. There's no vibe or excitement.
I'll actually
We wanna
show you
hold a
step by
party
step
while
how to do it
providing
with
you an
one of my extra
opportunity
phones.
to hang out in an environment where free speech and open inquiry are welcome, and then have a huge party. I was one of around 5 speakers alongside comedian Owen Benjamin, Gavin McInnes, and Canadian philosopher and YouTuber Stefan Molyneux. One of the big surprise guests was none other than leftist darling Chelsea Manning, who, as Bradley Manning, had been sentenced to prison for leaking military secrets, and whose sentence was commuted by President Obama after her transition. Manning later claimed to be doing research on the enemy by spying, something which is hard to do when one is the most identifiable person in the room and an event that was widely publicized to be open to all. Her cover story was quickly blown as photos were unleashed with her previously palling around with various new right scenesters. And what of it? The event was one of the rare opportunities to see the people who identified with this movement out in public. I was surprised. Unlike the typical autistic behavior so prevalent among libertarians, everyone was well-dressed and well-spoken. The several hundred attendees were respectful, friendly, and informed.
Autistic?
And asked smart, pertinent questions. They were well-adjusted. To have a room full of people who are virtually all well-adjusted in New York City is a minor miracle. But then, McGinnis was there too. At one point in the evening, he sidled up to me and launched into one of his hilarious monologues. It's like talking to a great stand-up comedian who hits you with punchline after punchline, but keeps a straight face even though he knows he's got you good. Did you see Chelsea Manning? He asked. Yeah, I talked to her. Her? Him? I guess I'll say her if she's here. Like, I don't understand how it works with trannies. Let's suppose you're in a dick. Well, they take estrogen so it makes the dick shrink to like a baby carrot. If you want dick, you want a big cock, like an elephant's trunk. But if you like pussy, you don't want a dick flopping back and forth like windshield wipers. Doesn't make any sense to me. Each of these sentences was of course punctuated by the appropriate hand motions. The controversy over transgenderism, bathrooms, and pronoun usage was predicted by Steve Saylor in Talkie Mag in 2013, over a year before the article that got Gavin fired from Thought Catalog. For Saylor, the structure of the dominant contemporary mindset means that with the triumph of gay marriage, a need will be felt for a new front in the elite cultural war on average people, with transgenderism, a catch-all phrase for a variety of complaints, the most likely salient. Saylor's approach here is common to him and emblematic of new right analysis. Similarly, he has put forth Saylor's law of female journalism, which holds that the most heartfelt articles by female journalists tend to be demands that social values be overturned in order that, come the revolution, the journalist herself will be considered.
Got a V12 Rolls Royce right behind a Tesla. Poison.
The salient question for Saylor is, what caused this article to be written in the first place? What purpose does it serve? In a new right context,
big old V12 right behind the Tesla. What a contrast.
The tendency is to focus on the writer or publication's given agenda. There is an idea among moderates on both sides of the aisle that we should focus on ideas and assume that fair-acting people can independently come to different conclusions. While this may hold true in interpersonal relationships, the idea that this holds true when it comes to members of the press is rejected in toto. An example of this sort of thinking could be seen.
I wonder if he's got the autopilot on because it's bouncing off of the.
Trump,
yeah, the autopilot's definitely on. It's correcting constantly.
In January 2018. Did you
right on the white line there.
From Norway? Asked Acosta. Is that true, Mr. President? I want them to come in from everywhere, Trump replied. Thank you very much, everybody. Just Caucasian or white countries, sir? Or do you want people to come in from other parts of the world, people of color? Trump pointed at Acosta and just said, out. There was no attempt to engage with a blatant accusation of racism, no pretense that he could or should try to bring Acosta around to his point of view. This was not an honest disagreement that could be resolved through discussion. This was someone with an agenda, dishonestly impugning motives in the guise of a question. The axiomatic belief that anti-progressivism and racism are quite literally synonymous forced an embarrassing New York Times correction about McGinnis's Proud Boys group in January 2017. As the article correctly notes, while most members who are recruited are white, there are also small numbers of non-whites in the group. It is not a rule that all members be white. That an organization would appeal disproportionately to whites is not a problem if said organization is part and parcel of progressive culture, like Whole Foods, the official supermarket of stuff white people like. Otherwise, things are suspicious. The fight for desegregation will never stop of its own accord. For the evangelical left, until and unless there are people of color in every possible venue, even the planet Vulcan, the crusade must continue on. It will never be enough. Chapter 11. Ego. Give me 4 years to teach the children. The seed I have sown will never be uprooted. Vladimir Lenin. Across the street from Alexander.
Yeah, it is nice. Hopefully it'll be nice. We're going to Pittsburgh again Saturday. So that ought to be fun. We'll probably leave a bit earlier than we did last time so we can get there earlier. get it
The
done
end
with.
results are something
Hang
like
around
the
downtown a little bit.
The Jabba the Hutt sequence from Return of the Jedi, populated by aliens of every possible shape and size. The attendees are all political outliers in their own way, but in this neutral space they can have discussions without raising one another's hackles. Like Jabba's palace in Tatooine, Alex's events feature a mix of people who normals might regard as grotesque, but who are actually nothing of the sort. I first met Mike Cernovich there, and for a while the Nazi, as in swastika tattoo, hacker Weave, crashed there as well. Yes, Alex is Jewish. I met Milo Yiannopoulos there in mid-February 2016. He didn't even stand out that much, certainly not compared to the literally 7-foot-tall weightlifter in attendance. The thing about Milo is that he's clearly and unabashedly a performer. This does not make him a phony or insincere, it just means he knows how to put on an entertaining show, something many conservatives are incapable of doing. Milo was going to be on a popular program, and the two of us figured out how he could call the host a cuck to their face without it being an incident, something he went on to pull off fabulously, as he is wont to do. After the game plan was set, he declared that I was a Machiavellian imp, which isn't as good as Observer calling me a Nietzschean weasel, but far better than the Onion's claim that I'm a human cockroach. My impression of Milo was that he was like a WWE heel, the bad guy in wrestling who knows how to get the audience riled up, even though they are in on the gag. Like the late Randy Macho King Savage, for example, Milo has come out to speak while seated on a throne, hoisted on the shoulders
This
of
is Michael Malice.
Another time he appeared in the as his femme persona Ivana Wall. His constant smirk,
That voice
far less
is pretty
present
distinctive,
off-screen,
Matt.
is the classic villain's wordless sign of contempt for his foes. Yet as I've had to explain to many people, there is a there there when it comes to Milo. Comedians are often very bright people whose minds work quickly and who see things that others don't, and often get people riled up in the process. Somehow, when it comes to humor and politics, this insight escapes them entirely. After all, why would someone who is capable of calm, insightful dialogue engage in near buffoonery? Several reasons. First, it disarms one's foes
Hobbit livery.
because they underestimate you. Second, it allows you to stand out. Third, it's easier to persuade people via entertaining anecdotes than rote argument. Finally, it's fun as hell. It's in this context that members of the new right...
All right, we're getting near the border, so you disconnect.
...as performative racism. When Microsoft launched an artificial intelligence chatbot in
Hang
March
around.
2016,
I'll reset
it
it.
took internet trolls less than a day to figure out how to make her say things like, "I fucking hate feminists and they should all die and burn in hell," and "Hitler would have done a better job than the monkey we have got now." Activism in the form of anti-racism became a new strategy designed to make the left feel unsafe and to prove their tacit assurances of increasing cultural hegemony were a lie. Several weeks after Alex's event, Milo was back in town and had me as a guest on his podcast. When I met him in his hotel room, the only really flamboyant parts of his wardrobe were the pearl bracelets he wore. Strewn throughout his room were plenty of pieces of Louis Vuitton luggage, really girl, as well as several young men in various states of slumber. To be clear, these weren't lovers of his. All straight, they were members of the Milo family. It's like a fabulous version of the Manson family, but they kill on stage and on social media, except for Twitter, which banned his handle @Nero in July 2016. I was prepared to engage in verbal repartee when we started to record, but Milo was
tall
not
hobbit.
prepared but almost deferential. Being good at banter, and Milo is world class, heavily depends on actually listening to the other party, so one can knock
5'2" is more Hobbit range, definitely.
When you interview, do compliment question, he told me. At the time, Milo still hadn't come up with a title for... Given his nickname for then-candidate Trump, I suggest daddy issues. This would have been perfectly apt at the time, but would have blown up in his face terribly after what ended up happening later. Milo had already been the object of a great many attacks, being called a Nazi, a fascist, a white supremacist, and everything in between. Amazingly, many conservatives had thought that because Milo was gay, partly Jewish, and very fond of being plowed by
This
black
indoctrination
men,
is
that he would be
5'9",
in some
so...
sense inoculated from leftist criticism. This is a fundamental misunderstanding of how the evangelical left operates. For them, a person's actual identity does not really matter. a person's actual actions do not really matter. What matters is the destruction of the heretic, and to take their criticisms and worldview at face value is to give them validity that they do not possess. Worse, doing so is ceding control of the conceptual framework to them. Yet, none of the attacks on Milo were sticking. One of the first effective attacks on Milo came from Ryan Holiday. The aforementioned Mr. Holiday's Trust Me, I'm Lying is a case study in how to exploit the media to create publicity for clients. Take the story of how he generated free buzz for his client Tucker Max's movie, I Hope They Serve Beer in Hell. After placing a series of offensive ads on buses in the metro, Holiday recalled, from my office I alternated between calling in angry complaints to the Chicago CTA and sending angry emails to city officials with reporters CC'd until, under pressure, they announced that they would be banning our advertisements and returning our money. Then we put out a press release denouncing this cowardly decision. It was free press and it was good press. Not only did it spread the word about Max's film, but it also gave him the appearance of standing up against political correctness run amok, when in fact, no one actually cared until Holiday forced them to. Holiday is not a member of the New Right. In July 2016, he even wrote an article titled, Dear Dad, Please Don't Vote for Donald Trump. I find it disgusting to hear him talk about banning Muslims from America, wrote Holiday. That's not what you taught me. That's not how this country is supposed to work. Holiday is one of the most perceptive people in the world when it comes to how media actually operates. As such, his analysis of the cathedral, or the communications aspect at least, is fairly close, if not identical, to how it is viewed by the New Right. His entire book describes how the internet and emotions form a kind of snake eating its own tail, where truth falls away and emotion and tribalism reign supreme. It's therefore no surprise at all that he didn't see Milo as a Nazi or a self-hating gay man or a pawn of forces greater than himself.
No mercy!
In February 2017, Holiday took a direct shot at Milo.
Yeah, if I got nobody in the office, we'll definitely get a game going. Boss of the Hogs here too.
Create the Milo trolling playbook. You should stop playing.
You guys want to play some poker today?
Numerous members of the alt-right
Pretty much caught up on my
book I published in 2012, which outlined exactly how this media strategy works. Wrote
my
Holiday.
recruiting for this week.
Several have told me, Trust Me, I'm Lying is their Bible. The strategy that Holiday lays out is indisputably true. Someone like Milo or Mike Cernovich doesn't care that you hate them. They like it. It's proof to their followers that they are doing something subversive and meaningful. The key tactic of alternative or provocative figures is to leverage the size and platform of their not audience, i.e., their haters in the mainstream, to attract attention and build an actual audience. This brings up a very key point that is often glossed over in discussions of Milo and the New Right. There is an implicit assumption that subversion is its own reward, that those who seek to tear down do so merely for the sake of tearing things down.
That's fine.
The arsonist does not plan to be a developer, after all. Yes, the juvenile punk desire to get pissed and destroy often does not have any articulate replacement in mind. Yet to equate subversion and meaninglessness is inaccurate, especially with regards to the New Right.
Yeah, this guy's moving.
There are many arsonists, but there are
Trying
many
to get in
developers
front of
among them
everybody
as well.
before they... Oh, wow.
The confusion
Real
comes
stickers.
because while there is consensus regarding destruction, there is none regarding whether that empty
Mother
lot will be
trucker.
replaced by a church, a castle, or a digital experience. In early 2017, a planned appearance by Milo at UC Berkeley was canceled after rioting there grew so bad that actual fires started on campus. While the New Right ideal is for the universities to be burned to the ground, perhaps with the earth salted so no life could ever grow there again, I had always taken this goal to be figurative and not literal. Some of the New Right took this as evidence of how far gone the evangelical left has become. The fact that Berkeley was home to the 1960s free speech movement was not lost on anyone. I took the other perspective, that the rioting and fires were some of the best things that could have ever happened to defeat the evangelical left in their own monasteries. The Ferguson riots of 2010 immediately preceded the midterm elections, where the Republicans picked up a mind-boggling 63 seats in the House and 6 seats in the Senate. Fun fact, the Wikipedia entry is listed as Ferguson unrest, which is the leftist euphemism for rioting. Regardless of one's politics, hell, regardless of whether one is a human being or an animal,
But it's a January 6th insurrection.
that fire is bad.
Ferguson
To see
unrest.
buildings burning
But
leads
January
everyone to
6th
say,
insurrection.
whatever this is, I'm against it. At the same time, The corporate press did a phenomenal job of not just excusing the rioting, but occasionally even glorifying it. The implicit message was, this is what we are for. The instinctive, natural reaction was to run in the other direction. A similar phenomenon famously happened at the 1968 Democratic Convention, where moderate and apolitical voters recoiled at the violence. To remove
Yeah, something's not right with it for sure, man.
things like burping
I feel bad for him too, because that's his only
person not speaking
stream of income, and that's definitely hampering people doing it. I mean, if it's not going to play it.
buildings demonstrate that the universities are, at the very least,
Wow, this guy's just
part of the
stopped on the
national
freeway.
success of the women. What finally
That's
brought
dangerous
Milo
as fuck.
down the
Oh, he's got a hammer and trying to get in front of a
previous
semi.
comments
Ooh.
he had made in various podcasts about his own sexual awakening. In February 2017, comments he had made over a year prior became widely disseminated online with all the marks of a hit job. Milo apparently lost his virginity to a Catholic priest. I'm grateful for Father Milo,
Really?
he said. I wouldn't give nearly such.
Well, yeah, more
big
little
head
donos just for people testing it, but
in
he's
any
not.
other context,
No one's going to waste big
LGBT
dollars on
activists
something that's
point
not
out
going
the
to play.
concept of heteronormativity, meaning it is unethical to expect gays and lesbians to live by heterosexual standards. It's not gays are okay because they're just like us. It's gays have the right to live on their own terms. As Milo put it in the same podcast, in the gay world, some of the most important, enriching, and incredibly life-affirming, important shaping relationships are between younger boys and older men. They can be hugely positive experiences very often for those young boys. For decades,
This is the
it was
person that
not
had to be in
uncommon
front of
for older gay
everybody.
men to initiate younger ones into
It's
the
this-
lifestyle. In fact, it was to be expected. A closeted and confused
I'd break
young
for
gay
roly
man would need
polies.
someone to guide him and let him know that he's not as
MILF,
alone
man,
as
I love
activities as
frogs.
he might
Oh,
feel.
God.
As a consequence, historically,
My
there's
cat is a
huge cultural
communist.
perception that homosexuality
Oh,
and
yeah,
pedophilia
exactly what you would
are
expect
virtually
them to look
identical.
like, too.
When Milo spoke of being taken advantage of as a young man by an older one and enjoying it, he was either A, the victim of statutory rape and trying to deal with that in his own way, or B, telling the truth and pointing out that male/male standards shouldn't be expected to be the same as male/female ones.
I guarantee you they're getting off at exit
What he
11.
heard was
Same one I am.
pedophilia is okay. A Facebook post of his titled "A Note for Idiots" tried to clarify his position. I have outed 3 pedophiles in my career as a journalist. That's 3 more than any of my critics and a peculiar strategy for supposed pedophile apologists. I did joke about giving better head as a result of clerical sexual abuse committed against me when I was a teen. If I choose to deal in an edgy way on an internet live stream with a crime I was the victim of, that's my prerogative. It's no different to gallows humor from AIDS sufferers. He also clarified the specifics of his interaction. I was talking about my own relationship when I was 17 with a man who was 29. The age of consent in the UK is 16. It didn't work. Milo's book was canceled. He was publicly uninvited for CPAC, and he left Breitbart as well. Milo is a great case study in how the politics of taboo and heresy are used not to fight ideas, but to defeat the people who hold said ideas. Heresy works almost like an online hyperlink. It is, and then the mind fills in the rest. In this case, the terms pedophile and child molester were successfully linked in the media's collective mind.
I'm waiting for them to put the dispos on those little blue exit signs.
Milo, a suggestion to work with.
Wonder what category they put it under.
Is it like a pedophile?
Healthcare?
All that was necessary was for the term to somehow be associated with him. From that point
You know,
on,
you got your little blue sign here. It has gas stations, lodging.
It was the corporate press's way of giving him a warning label. He's
Used to be a bunch of food places. Now all that's left up here is Taco Bell attached to a gas station.
Every article about Bill Clinton.
You got to have Taco Bell around 6 different dispos, though, I guess.
The frequent claim that Clinton was impeached for having sex with an intern, as opposed to perjury and obstruction of justice, is like claiming a drunk driver was arrested for choosing the wrong beverage to go with his dinner. After Simon & Schuster canceled his book, Milo went ahead and put it out anyway. His face was plastered all over the New York City subways and buses, and the book hit the New York Times bestseller list. Soon after the book's release, Out magazine ran a blatantly false headline. No one is buying Milo Yiannopoulos' memoir. In the article, the author admitted that, since launching on July 4th, Dangerous has sold 18,268 copies in the US. an impressive number by publishing standards. Sure enough, the author was quick to claim that Milo is someone who's openly...
I told you they were getting
supports
off here.
child abuse.
I lie to my therapist. Mothman is a gentle and caring lover.
68 too many.
Oh, Jesus.
The idea that literally no one should be reading
Got
Milo's
tism?
book is totalitarian in its claim and absurd in its face. Yet Milo's setbacks, hardly a complete defeat, affected the new right not at all. The attack model
I knew they were
is
getting off
becoming
here.
an outdated one. Both political parties operate under a system where leaders are taken out with no one to replace them. The highly effective attacks on George W. Bush and Hillary Clinton, respectively, had enormous consequences for their underlings and supporters. But as its detractors fear and they themselves understand, the new right might be more akin to Al-Qaeda in its structure. Killing Osama bin Laden was symbolically important, and it prevented him from further plotting mass murder. Al-Qaeda is by all accounts a shadow of its former self. Yet terrorist attacks continue unabated.
Let's see, which one are they picking?
With ISIS, a group that doesn't
Is it
seek
going to be
out
King
even
of Buds?
Similarly,
Is
taking
it
down
going to
Milo
be
was a mere speed
Nirvana?
bump. Closing down a new right message board such as ours
No, it's
would
not
silence
gonna be Herb
discourse
either.
until a new location could be found.
Oh,
Given
they're
how easy this would be
accelerating.
to do,
Oh, they're
and
passing
the
them all up.
location of the new board would be disseminated,
Oh, they must be going to
it would
one,
probably
some of the
set
ones
these
on the
back
other
by
side.
a day or two.
He's hauling
And in
ass.
fact, Milo was resilient enough to handle the blows and maintain an audience despite it all. In July 2017, he filed suit against Simon & Schuster for canceling his book. 2 months later, word got out that Milo was planning a free speech week at Berkeley. I was as dumbfounded to see that I was publicly announced as a speaker about Islam as I was to see Vanity Fair describe me as a conservative writer. The correction came quite swiftly. Apparently, some of the speakers had never even been approached to begin with. Charles Murray, author of The Bell Curve, explicitly said, "The inclusion of my name in the list of speakers was done without my knowledge or permission. I will add that I would never, under any circumstances, appear at an event that included Milo Yiannopoulos." He further told the Chronicle of Higher Education that he wouldn't appear with Milo because he's a despicable asshole. In October 2017...
Oh, they're going to Loom, I guarantee it. That's what the end of that road there is. Loom Cannabis.
Milo was either palling around with the worst, the hacker Weave again makes an appearance, or being a responsible journalist and asking them to explain their points of view in their own words. But it did not help his case that his email password began with Long Knives 1290. As Bernstein explained, the Night of the Long Knives was the Nazi purge of the leadership of the SA. The purge famously included Ernst Röhm, the SA's gay leader. 1290 is the year King Edward I expelled the Jews from England. A month later, his sponsor Robert Mercer publicly cut ties with him, and not very tactfully either. In my opinion, actions of and statements by Mr. Yiannopoulos have caused pain and divisiveness, undermining the open and productive discourse that I had hoped to facilitate, Mercer wrote. I was mistaken to have supported him, and for several weeks have been in the process of severing all ties with him. His lawsuit against Simon & Schuster did not go well. He fired his lawyer and decided to represent himself, not a genuinely recommended legal strategy. As he explained, it was partly because me and my attorneys had a different strategy, and partly because I'm between billionaires at the moment, and it was costing me $100 grand a month. He asked to drop the case entirely in February 2018. The three legs of the progressive stool are the universities, the media, and the government. For the new right, the universities are the source of the other two. Virtually everyone in media, especially journalism, is a college graduate. With few, if any, exceptions, every member of Congress is a college graduate, most of whom have law degrees to boot. Andrew Breitbart saw this analysis as essential, writing, "The left does not win its battles in debate. It doesn't have to. In the 21st century, media is everything. The left wins because it controls the narrative. The narrative is controlled by the media. The left is the media. Narrative is everything." This is why the conservative insistence on fighting the government in Washington is somewhat doomed from the start. Fighting DC is like arresting the street dealer, who is the end point in the drug trade. It's the most visible aspect of the problem, sure, but it doesn't address the source of the spreading contamination. The new right and other cultural actors have done an enormous amount of work to discredit the press and the government. The last target for them to eviscerate is the universities. This is a trickier task, but the wheels are already in motion. For decades, going to college was the acme of bourgeois aspirations. The idea of being the first person in one's family to receive a degree speaks to the heart of the American dream, where every generation does better than the one that preceded it. Here was concrete, demonstrable proof that progress was being made. There is little dispute that a college that can be uttered by Bernie Sanders as easily as by Jeff Sessions. Yet other than those schools that have no set curriculum, every other major and second-tier liberal arts or university has some sort of progressive propaganda course as a requirement for every student. The university's explicit goal is to train the next generation's elites.
Dude.
No one disputes this, though some prefer to use platitudes like training the leaders of tomorrow. This is a banal way of obscuring an important point. Are the leaders being trained to be leaders, or are they being trained to be evangelists? The answer is both, and for the new right, it is the second group that is the enemy. To call something a conspiracy theory, even an actual conspiracy, is akin to calling it racist. It's a mechanism to dismiss a subject or speaker without having to engage with their ideas. Technically speaking, the Constitutional Convention, a small elite who swore their discussions to secrecy, was a conspiracy. We don't use the term to describe it as such, since we like those fine men. To be sure, conspiracies usually have a nefarious, covert goal. The new right views the college system as having such a goal, though most others do not. But if the goal of the universities isn't universally understood to be nefarious, it is unambiguously covert, and it is so by design and has been since the beginning. It is not just the new right, but virtually every right-wing publication that thinks the universities have gotten out of control. National Review regularly has articles pointing out madness on campus. The idea is that this is new, and it's constantly hammered as a largely unprecedented phenomenon in new right circles. Yet this is not true, at least not entirely. For over a century, universities have been designed to promulgate a leftist takeover and control of American society. And it's a story that has only been uncovered fully in recent years. The secret origin of the evangelical left and their vision for what universities can do was uncovered by Thomas C. Leonard, who is ironically a research scholar at Woodrow Wilson's very own Princeton University. Leonard's 2015 book, Illiberal Reformers, is ostensibly about race, eugenics, and American economics in the progressive era. He sets out to make the little disputed claim that early progressivism was involved in certain things that are anathema to the contemporary left. Conservatives like to point this out as leftist hypocrisy, yet no one cares. Conservatives of today vary greatly from the conservatives of a century ago as well. This isn't hypocrisy so much as the development of an ideology. The first half of Leonard's book, The Progressive Ascendancy, describes how early progressives consciously and successfully set out to change the university system in order to produce...
All right, we're at work. What time is it? It's 5 to noon here. I'm going to shoot for 15 minutes after the hour if everything gets set up right and quick. Soda, salt. All right, about quarter after the hour, between that and half hour, we should be back up. We'll set up a game, and it won't take long to walk you through that, Matt. See you guys in a bit. Thanks for hanging out.